Hello, last speaker, no pressure. Thanks everyone for sticking around. As of today, I have about 46,000 followers on Twitter. It's not Katy Perry numbers, but I'm also pretty proud of that. For the past 2 years, I have worked at Giant Bomb. It's a video game website where the people talking about the games are front and center just as much as the games themselves. That means people have a pretty strong opinion of us, both positive and negative. When I was hired at Giant Bomb, I didn't want to shy away from talking about topics that were important to me. I wanted to talk about big questions facing video games in 2013, whether this was systemic, misogynistic game design or sexist marketing that didn't make a whole lot of sense, given that in 2013, more than 50% of video game players are in fact women. But nobody prepared me for what it's like when thousands of people are yelling at you, telling you that you're wrong. There's no handbook for how to conduct yourself on the internet, though I really wish there was. It wouldn't take very long to spend a little time and conclude that the internet is a dark, cynical, negative place where no real interesting discourse happens. And for the most part, I'd agree with you. But I think there are ways out of that. And I think part of that involves participation from everyone in this room when they leave. You might have heard of the game Grand Theft Auto 5. It was released just a couple of weeks ago. It made more than $1 billion for its publisher in just a couple of days. If you're not familiar with the Grand Theft Auto series, most players choose to go on violent shooting massacres, but you can also do things like parasail, you can follow traffic laws. It's a big open world that allows you to do kind of whatever you want. And when Grand Theft Auto was released, it was released to critical acclaim. Critics loved it. The reviews that came in just before the game launched lauded it. They were really happy with the new Grand Theft Auto. And that included GameSpot critic Carolyn Pettit. Now, Carolyn gave the game a 9 out of 10. Spent hundreds of words talking about how much she liked it. But she spent a paragraph or two discussing the fact that she didn't care for the game's portrayal of women. Characters constantly spout lines that glorify male sexuality while demeaning women, and the billboards and radio stations of the world reinforce this misogyny with ads that equate manhood with sleek sports cars while encouraging women to purchase a fragrance that will make them smell like a... Now, you wouldn't be shocked to learn that there were thousands of comments on Carolyn's article. You might be a little bit shocked to realize that most of these comments focused exclusively on the fact that she spent a little bit of time talking about the game's portrayal of women. You might also be surprised that the majority of those comments decided that they would exclusively discuss the fact that Carolyn is transgender. It is not an important part or defining part of her as a critic. It is not relevant to what she thinks about the game's portrayal of women. But on the internet, we often try and find the most personal things out about people. And when we disagree with them, we use that to hurt them. Now, I can't show you any of these comments because they were deleted. And Carolyn herself, when her review went up, she was a consummate professional. In fact, she's seen worse. The entire day, she let this stuff roll off her back. But what does it say about the state of internet discourse where, in order to get some meaningful feedback to something you have to say, you have to also wade through a toxic wasteland to see what people think? But I'm guilty of being a jerk too, as it turns out. There's a service called AdBlock. AdBlock is an add-on for your web browser that removes ads from the internet, most of them anyway. Some people use it because, hey, the idea of the internet without ads sounds pretty cool. Some people use it for security reasons. There are all sorts of reasons that people use this service. But as someone that works on the internet, someone that thinks it would be cool to make money on what I do for a living, you wouldn't be surprised that I have some pretty strong opinions about a service that dismantles one of the ways that I'm able to do my job. Now, recently, AdBlock was raising money to buy ads to promote their service that removes ads. And this prompted a pretty interesting conversation. And someone asked me a pretty innocent question on Twitter. What is your response to people who don't care about ads affecting your site? Is there even one? Now, I'm sure you're thinking, this Patrick guy, he's up here giving a TEDx talk about discourse on the internet. He probably gave this guy a really nuanced explanation for why it's important that there are ads even as we try and figure out new business models. And I'm here to tell you, you are 100% wrong. Because instead, I told 46,000 people to die in a fire. Because I had an emotional reaction. I disagreed with someone, and despite the fact that I'm a public figure on the internet, I chose to engage with really heated rhetoric because it was something I really believed in. Now, I don't want these people to die in a fire, but I had an emotional reaction. Social media trains us, is built upon us having emotional, knee-jerk reactions and not thinking about the consequences. Every time we do this, we turn the dial up on dialogue on the internet just a little bit. It happens incrementally over time. But one person does it, another person does it, another person does it. And even though I know better, I did it anyway too. There was a study not too long ago in which 1,000 people were asked to read an article about a fake mineral that might have some health benefits. This was completely made up, and the minerals might have some positive impact, but also we're going to have some side effects. Now, these people were split into two groups. The first group read the article and then read some fake comments underneath it. These comments were pretty civil. Talked about some of the pros, talked about some of the cons, kind of the discourse you might expect like at a dinner table. Those people had the same opinion about the article after reading the comments. The second group was asked to read the same article, but a completely different set of comments that were purposely much ruder and much more vitriolic. Stuff like this. If you don't see the benefits of using nanotechnology in these kinds of products, you're an idiot. Which, if you've been on the internet, stuff like that sounds probably pretty familiar. Here's what's astounding. What they found was that the people that read this version of the article with these comments had a much more polarized, extreme reaction to the article itself, even though they're exactly the same. And what this suggests is that what we are reading that complements the stuff we're consuming, whether it's an article or a video, is influencing our reaction to that content. Now, this may have been fake, but it was masquerading as a science article, something that in some way is rooted in fact. Imagine when we start applying this to situations when we are talking about things that are much more in the realm of opinion. One of my favorite Twitter accounts is something called Avoid or Don't Read Comments. Its tagline is, "This will tweet periodic reminders to not read the comments section for pretty much, well, anything ever." And it has choice tweets like this. You wouldn't listen to someone named Bonerman26 in real life. Don't read the comments. And there's probably a grain of truth to that, but I think what it suggests and the fact that we have to have things like this to remind us to not read the comments suggests something pretty dark about the internet, which is that don't seek out feedback. It's gotten so toxic, it's gotten so ugly, what's the point? Like, why would you even go there? And I think this is a really dangerous path because I want to be challenged. I want to be told I'm wrong. I want to be able to come back with a better counter-argument because someone has dismantled the one I've made. We've seen what happens when we go off to our own private echo chambers. It's happening on cable news right now. It's pretty ugly. It doesn't help anyone. There's no actual discourse. It's just a bunch of rah-rah, don't you feel good about your pre-existing viewpoint. And that bums me out. That's not what I want to see. I want to be told when I'm wrong, and I want to have a constructive dialogue about it. There are some people trying to solve this in some pretty interesting ways. And the ways they're going about it are pretty interesting. The internet, for as much as it's demonized for the fact that you can be anonymous, there's actually something kind of beautiful about that. Think about it this way. So when you talk to someone in real life, you take into account, consciously or subconsciously, age, sex, gender, your personal history with them. You may not mean to, but it happens. On the internet, assuming that they're not named Bonerman26, you respond to their ideas. You respond to what they say. And I think there's something inherently amazing about that that's being lost as we decide to walk away from feedback on the internet. Now, some of the ways that people are trying to solve this issue, trying to make things a little more civil, are Facebook comments. So the idea here being that if you register your Facebook account, your real name is attached to it, and that hopefully as a result, you will act a little bit more like you might in real life. What we find, however, is that it actually ends up being a little bit more depressing, because instead people act roughly the same as they do if they were on the internet with an anonymous name, and it's kind of a bummer when you see them holding a baby and they're saying this stuff. And some other places are trying to handle it in some other ways. So, for example, Popular Science. They cited the study I talked about before and just said, you know what? This is not contributing to a proper discourse about the science we're trying to present. It's actually not even allowing people to ingest the material properly. They are distracted by the polarizing commentary underneath. So they just turned off the comments. YouTube is trying to introduce some automation tools. For example, content creators can now flag certain words, and if someone starts typing that into a content and they hit submit, it just goes straight to the trash. So, for example, homophobic slurs are very common. So if you start flagging those words, as soon as they show up, they don't even appear on the page. The idea being that hopefully, if you filter out a lot of the garbage, you can have a dialogue occur in the comments. The other popular thing that we have seen lately is public shaming. So public shaming is where people say something on Twitter, assume they are saying it to their friends and family, which you are not. If you are not looking at your privacy settings, you should. So these people say something about some topic that's happened in the news. It gets rounded up and then passed on to websites like BuzzFeed. And in this case, there was an Indian American woman who was just recently crowned Miss America. And this is some of the commentary that people had to say about her. Miss America is a terrorist, whatever, it's fine. Miss America right now, or Miss Al-Qaeda. Now, obviously, it's clear how misguided these are, but how would you think that this woman responded? If you saw this said about you in one of your proudest moments, how would you respond to that? I'm thankful there are children watching at home who can finally relate to a new Miss America. The way we respond to vitriolic commentary is different. We all handle that in different ways. I've tried, and sometimes failed, to stop responding to some of the more incendiary comments. I've found that only fuels them. I found that the more attention you give it, the more they're willing to fire back. But like I said, I don't want to avoid feedback. I want to be able to go into a place, I want to be able to publish an article, say a tweet, and read what people have to say about it. About a year ago, I got a phone call from my brother. In fact, I had missed about 15 or 20 phone calls. And the moment you get back to your phone and you see something like that, not a good chance that you're actually in for good news. As it turned out, my father had passed away of a sudden and unexpected heart attack at 56 years old. I was only a couple of weeks from being married at the time. My dad was, is, and always will be the biggest champion of my work, even if often he had no idea what I did for a living. And when this happened, this was big news. I live a lot of my life on the internet. It felt natural to share this with everyone. And so after around 24 hours, I chose to do that. I let everyone know my father had passed, and then I went off to spend time with my friends and family. At some point, I did turn my phone back on. And was pretty shocked at some of the things that I saw. I was shocked that there were some people in response to a photo of a bonfire saying, "Are you having fun burning your father's body?" I was shocked to see the number of people gleeful that I could not be at the job that I was so proud to do, and that this kept me out of the office for a couple of weeks. I was also surprised by this. On our site, hundreds and thousands of users started a message board thread called the Patrick Appreciation Thread, in which there were thousands of messages of support and condolences to me, my family, about a guy they were never going to meet, they had never met. And during that first week, the hardest week, I would load this up on my phone, and I would just cry. These people had my back at a moment that they didn't need to, but they chose to reach out and support me. Many of these people didn't agree with me on a regular basis, but that's okay. I keep a series of letters in my bag. My bag is right behind the stage right now. These are letters that people have written me over the years, where something I've done, something I've said has touched them or gotten them through a hard time. I keep those letters by me, and when I feel the need to respond, I feel the need to lash out, I read these letters. It is important to remind ourselves of the kindness of strangers. It helps us dial down the volume as well. It is important to remind ourselves that people on the internet are capable of kind and great things, and that we can contribute to that. I try and wake up every morning and remind myself that the 1% that's trying to get under my skin, that's not what I'm doing my job for. I do my job for that 99% of people that support me, that did that thread, that are there every day cheering me on, even when we agree and we disagree. And what's interesting is that these tools that were designed to empower speech have instead allowed a vocal minority to oppress and marginalize the very people that should be using these tools to be able to speak up and be heard. Now, in the video game industry, there was a hashtag not too long ago called One Reason Why. It was one reason why there are not more women in the video game industry. It's a large systemic problem that the industry has faced for years. We kind of sweep it under the carpet. We pretend that it's not as big of a deal as it actually is. Now, these people used one reason why to express one reason why it was true for them. And these people were able to use a tool that has essentially been relegated to the corners of beer commercials to sell us things, to come together, to speak in one voice, to speak on a larger platform with a larger megaphone, and say, you are not alone. We are not alone. It gave people the courage to stand up, to say their story, to say why they have felt marginalized, to share a new idea about how we might have a better path forward. We can't control what other people do on the internet. You can introduce tools, but ultimately, we're responsible for what each of us contributes, what each of us contributes to the noise. And if all of us can dial it down, over time, maybe the volume comes down with it. But it's really easy to look at all this and say, what can one person do? And it's true, one person really can't make that much of a difference. But is it exactly that kind of complacency that has allowed us to get into the situation we are now, where instead of engaging with one of the most powerful tools in modern history, we choose to ignore it? We can make it socially unacceptable to be rude to people on the internet just as it is in real life. The next time I see someone sharing a new idea and getting bullied for it, I'm going to stand up for them. And the next time I feel the need to feel better about myself by telling someone to die in a fire, I'm not going to do it. The internet is a powerful tool. It can bind us, it can tear us apart. But I'm also not willing to give it up to such a vocal minority. Speak up, because if you don't, who will? Thanks.